This is something I have recently read about on various different sites, including Reddit, and it's something that came completely out of the blue. But at the same time, it's not surprising that this is happening because Sega, um, they planned on rebooting several of their older IPs. I just didn't know that Virtua Fighter was going to be one of them. And for those who don't know, the Virtua Fighter series has been it was really popular back in the 90s for the most part, mainly because it was probably one of the first like real 3D, fighting games that we got back in the day. And a lot of people would go on record and tell you that the Virtua series is past its prime because even though the gameplay had gotten better over time during the 2000s, um, it couldn't match the level of popularity that Tekken had and that Mortal Kombat was having back in the day, or even like Soul Calibur for that matter. Those franchises became more popular than Virtua Fighter. In fact, the last Virtua Fighter game we got was back in 2006, I believe, and I believe that was Virtua Fighter 5. And Sega's saying that they're coming out with a Virtua Fighter 6 sometime in the future. And the thing about that is, we have no idea when to expect the game to be released. We have no idea whether or not they even started the development process as of yet. But it's something that people are actually stoked about, especially those who've been hardcore fans of Virtua Fighter since the 90s and the 2000s. And and honestly, I feel like for the most part, it's one of Sega's more underrated IPs, because they have quite a bit. Streets of Rage being one, Shinobi being one, Crazy Taxi being another. Virtua Fighter, for the most part, seems pretty bland in comparison to that of Tekken and Soul Calibur and all that stuff, because even though you have like various different characters like Sarah Bryan, Jackie Bryan, Akira, Vanessa Williams. They're not, larger than life characters like, what you would see from Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter or anything like that. And I feel like for the most part, another Virtual Fighter game could help renew people's interest in the series if done right. Because for the most part, I feel like the older Virtual Fighter games were just arcade fighting games. They didn't have like strong storylines, or they were never really story driven or anything like that in the past, at least not to my knowledge. And I feel like that's something that Sega should definitely focus on in this upcoming Virtua Fighter game whenever it comes out. I'm expecting it to come out sometime during the PS5, Xbox Series X generation, and honestly, I hope we get more, updates and more, details about this upcoming game. And I wonder whether or not it's going to be on the Switch too, because even if you have, Virtua Fighter 6 or whatever on Nintendo Switch 2, it probably won't sell as much for the most part because it'd be a third party game on a Nintendo console. We all know how that works. And and yeah, it seems like Sega plans on making a big comeback in relation to gaming. They're looking at all their older IPs and all the stuff that sold back in the day, and they're starting to realize that people like the older stuff. And for the most part, a lot of people are just numb to new video games that come out nowadays because they just feel bland and lifeless and shallow and boring. And normally they're copies of something else, and that's something that people are sick of for the most part. People are sick of bland, first person shooters or bland action adventure games. And a lot of those games have characters that nobody can relate to. They're not popular. No one cares about them, and the games that come out are just quickly forgotten the following year. It seems like those games have been getting heavily criticized by a lot of people. They've been getting bad scores on Metacritic, but a lot of people love the classics, and a lot of people are excited to see Sega finally bring back Virtua Fighter. And and I honestly feel like if Sega, pulls this off, or they do it the right way in terms of like development, I do feel that the series could, become it could become as mainstream as it was back in the 90s for a short period of time before it eventually lost its popularity going into like the late 2000s or what have you. But But yeah, I'm looking forward to learning more information about this upcoming Virtua Fighter game as well as its release date.